Hi, this is Wes Bridle, and this is another Kingdom Calling Economic Update video. I had a little bit of a battery issue, so this is my second attempt at, I believe, video number 6, I believe. This one's going to be on government ineptitude and destroying what they're doing is causing destruction everywhere, unfortunately. A lot of them are trying to do good, but just the nature of where they are and their short-term threshold for pain means mostly what they do is bad. So I'm going to go into some details, the things that are really causing some pain and will be causing some serious pain down the road. All of these videos are updates to the Coming Storm video, which we put out a year and a half ago. If you haven't seen that, it's really important that you do, because it really shows you big picture what's going on out there. You'll see a lot of the predictions we made back then have come true, and yet there's still time for you to prepare your family, so that's really important. There's a link to see that video for free right next to this video. So jumping in, the S&P futures orders being placed after hours just a couple months ago, but for people who really watch the market, after hours when hardly anybody is trading, some massive entity was coming in and placing huge buy orders in above the market. Now, no right-minded trader or investor would do that because it's stupid. Why would you pay more than you have to for something? Who would want the market, the stock market, to keep going up at the expense of their own account? The government would certainly want that. We don't know who's doing it, but somebody was going in, pushing the stock market up by paying more than they needed to in the S&P futures. Interesting. Government handouts are now 35% of all wages and salaries in the U.S. So if we're not upset with them blowing our money, trying to manipulate a market, which never works in the end, we should be very upset with the fact that we're now getting close to the point. I was pointing to Greece's massive problems in a prior video I just shot about Europe. We're not that far behind. 35% of all wages and salaries in the U.S. come from the government. That's not sustainable. The government doesn't produce anything. So even though they produce nothing of value, they're paying 35% of the salaries of United States employees. It's a huge, huge problem. The working people, the people that produce, the companies that produce in this country cannot support that. The Fed's Dudley says he went into a meeting in New York and said there's no inflation. Let me tell you, the iPad 2 just came out, and it is a lot more powerful than the iPad 1, but it had the same price. That shows you there's no inflation. Somebody in the back of the audience yelled out, "I can't eat an iPad." It just shows you, it's a good example of the ivory tower problem that we have with these people that are making the regulations for us, have really no connection to us, and they don't have, they're sitting there staring at numbers as if that has any real value. Numbers they manipulated, by the way. Meanwhile, real people have no question that inflation is going on because the things that they spend money on are definitely going up. Canada has lowered its corporate tax rate, so now the U.S. has the second highest corporate tax rate in the world. That is not a way for us to get ahead when we tell our corporations, if you want to do business in this country, if you want to be based here, you're going to have to pay higher taxes than just about anybody. It's not a good incentive for companies to stay here. It's a global world these days. It's easy for a company to move. And we're telling you, if you want to do business here in this country, be domiciled here, you have to pay the second highest taxes in the world. Talk in Congress is, it's just talk. It's not a bill that's like about to pass or anything. But they're talking about taxing us based on the number of miles we drive. Now, how would they do that? They put a little machine in our car. They actually had the Congressional Budget Office analyze this situation so they could tax us for every mile that we drive. Well, not only that, of course, but they would also have access to exactly where we were all the time. That's some pretty scary Big Brother stuff. New York Fed said that there's a very low risk of a new recession, and they came to this decision by studying treasury spreads. In other words, the price or the yield of treasuries. By studying these, they decided there's a low risk of recession because of what interest rates are doing. Well, hello, you manipulate interest rates. You buy 70% of the treasuries. So if you buy 70% of it, of course you're affecting the price. How can you then use that data to determine that there's no risk of recession? It's the most ridiculous thing ever. I think one of my other points, either in this video or one coming up, is about something pretty interesting that the Fed put together, but this is the most bizarre study ever. To act like they're not manipulating the results when they're the 70% buyer. I mean, they're way bigger than all other buyers combined, and they're going to act like that's a market rate that's being determined. It's ridiculous. So budget deal between Republicans and Democrats. This is a couple months back, but you probably heard about this. They're bragging about all the money that they cut. We have $1.5–2 trillion deficit. The CBO looked at it, and it's cutting $352 million this year. I think they said it was something like $70 billion, which is still nothing. But the CBO looked at it and said, well, it's actually cutting $352 million. I'd like for someone to give me $352 million. But as far as cutting the $1.5–2 trillion deficit, that's absolutely nothing. It shows that they're not even serious. Obama blaming oil prices on speculators instead of owning up to the fact that the debt that he and Congress are creating, that the Fed's having to paper over so that we don't blow up, is creating high oil prices. People are concerned about oil. That's big time because we all buy gas every week. And so it gets you good brownie points with the masses to scream at this problem and then blame it on somebody. You don't want to blame it on yourself. That's a foolish way to play politics. So you blame it on the evil speculators. Well, if you remember, Nixon did this when he took us off the gold standard. Everything he said in that speech, taking us off the gold standard, is exactly what ended up happening, that he said would happen based on the way it was. Instead, when he changed it, all those things did happen. But he blamed it on evil speculators. It's always the easy way for the lazy, evil, if you want to use their word, politician to get out of real problems and real solutions by just blaming somebody else. The reality is every commodity price has been shooting up, not just oil. So there's not some oil speculator that's in there messing with things. The reality is they're printing money like crazy that's making the price of things go up. It's just really simple economics. It's ridiculous. I mean, they know what's going on, but they don't want you to know what's going on. The Justice Department is going so far as to investigate the situation. So I don't know what they're going to come up with. Probably new laws that screw up our economy even more. Whenever they come in, they produce new regulations. It just causes the economy to slow down more and more. Our society's gotten to the point where we have so many regulations, it's incredibly difficult to do any kind of business. And that's them fixing things for us. I'm coming off a little negative on government, and I guess that's just the reality of the situation. It's really clear historically. In every country of the world, in every state in the country, throughout all of time, the more regulation, the more the government gets involved with things, the worse the economy does. This is a fact. It's not a political stance. It's just a fact of world history. You either understand economics or you don't. Politicians, on the other hand, whether they understand it or not, some do, some don't. But the ones that do understand it and want power for themselves are going to ignore that fact because they want more power for themselves. They want more money for themselves and their friends. And again, that's just the way politics works. But this is an interesting study I read. In 1958, the onion lobby got it made illegal for there to be trading on onions. So whereas we have these markets for orange juice and oil and cotton and all these things, there is no such market for onions. It makes for an interesting case study. If this trading and all these evil speculators make the market go haywire, the way the politicians would have us believe, then the onion prices should be really smooth because there is no trading platform for those. It's just the market without any kind of place for them to trade. And so, since they have no exchange, we should see nice smooth prices, right? Well, actually, onion prices fluctuate up and down far more than any of these other markets. I wish I could show you this graph, but it is up and down, up and down, up and down all the time, far more than oil or any of these other prices. And there's no evil speculators to blame for that. So what's going on? Well, actually, the speculators are providing liquidity to the market, and they actually ease out those ups and downs. Because onions don't have that, they have severe ups and downs. So Democrats want higher taxes. Did you know, this is an interesting little tidbit, it's kind of pointless because it would hopefully never happen in real life, but it's pretty astonishing because the Democrats would have you believe if we simply raise taxes on the rich, all our problems would be solved. Did you know that if the government took 100% of every dollar earned by those making $250,000 or more per year, that still would not have been enough for us to have a surplus in the United States last year? The United States would have still had a deficit even with taking every penny earned of those making $250,000 a year. Now, if you, again, understand basic economics, all those people would quit. They would not keep working if you took all their money. And so the country would fall apart, and the poor people, the middle class people, would have no way to earn a living anymore because of those other people would do that. That's how economics works, but the Democrats want to just say higher taxes will solve our problem. The reality is we have a spending problem, not a tax problem. We're spending far too much of our money, and that's where our problems are developing. But even if in this utopian society where they could take all of everybody's money, it still wouldn't be enough. It's a spending problem. Irish government planned a new tax on pensions. This is very recent. They want to shore up the Irish government's financial situation, so they're planning a new tax on people's pensions. Are you ready when they come after your 401k and IRA? I feel I've been talking about this for years, but I'm feeling more and more certain that's going to happen. It's not happening today, but that's where the money is, and when they get desperate enough, that's where they're coming after. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to have a part 2 here in a minute, which you'll probably see tomorrow or the next day. Thanks, and God bless you.